Fabian is sort of in charge of renewing the Titans and sort of bringing them a bit more relevant in the game. That's the word. And the sort of talk was that he really wants to get into this rock, paper, scissors sort of thing between Metroplex and the other Titans, which is a bit difficult when one will be a 5-star and the rest won't until later. But eventually, I imagine he wants it like that. But I think the big problem as well is that there's another Titan coming in. That'll be a 4th. So instead of a rock, paper, scissors, and it's kind of like a square, it doesn't work as much. It's going to be hard where it really fits in. But all this sort of, try and guess how it's going to work in the game. But Fabian, to his credit, said that he wants to sort of give him a big overhaul and wants to add some things in. Now, none of this is guaranteed, none of this has been promised, but it's just some ideas. But he has sort of said he's not flush for time, but it is something he wants to do. So credit to him. And he said that he sort of like helped make Titans and they've not been maybe as successful as he once thought. And you know what? I'll give him credit to that. At least he's been man enough to sort of own up and go, yeah, it didn't really work. But I think it was almost an impossible task. I think it was almost impossible to balance because of the size of them. And I always said it's impossible to balance a bot that is as big as the base. Because by rights, they should take out the whole base on their own. But if they do that, it's going to be OP to hell and a waste of time. And the borderline that way, that in lower levels, they can take out a whole base on their own. And I'm sure it's really, difficult for us, a newer player, to sort of see that happening and see any sort of, end game in sight where they can get through because you can come with one Titan and take out the whole base. So not balanced at all. But then again, they can't have them underpowered because they're no waste of time and there's no point in having them. So very difficult to balance. But I don't normally call out people in playtest unless it's done something good. If it's something I don't really like in playtest, I'll be like, yeah, someone said this, and I won't really call them out because I'm talking about a subject or such. But someone mentioned something in playtest today, and I thought, you know what, that's a really good idea. And I was a bit gutted. I didn't think about it. If I'm honest with you, I sort of touched upon it. Maybe you could say that, but not quite. And that person, Jacada, who I think is quite knowledgeable, talks a lot of sense, quite reasonable with his explanations and the way he sort of talks about things. We don't see eye to eye on everything sometimes, but I think he's quite knowledgeable, really. And he sort of said that, about this rock, paper, scissors thing, that we have this sort of base effect that they never really expanded on. And he sort of said, we need to expand on that and really give each Titan an effect for your bots. So each Titan does something different. Maybe gives your bots protection, maybe gives them more speed, maybe gives them more damage, whatever it might be. But they all give something different, and that equates into your bots when you're maybe on defense, maybe on attack, whatever it is. That was a good idea. I don't think that's totally out of the box, really. I'm sure other people sort of suggested that. And then Fabian sort of said, yeah, well, I'm thinking about making some new abilities so you can sort of make your Titan more defensive. So if mine's defensive and yours is attack, and more balanced, whereas if mine's on defense and balanced that way to be defensive, this will be harder to take down, but not really good on attack. It makes sort of sense, and I thought that's pretty good. But there was a thing that what Jacada said, and I was like, you're onto something there. You really are. And what he said was why don't we have Titan cores for defenses? And he started explaining it, and he sort of explained that they could give him more HP, and I don't really like that idea because we've got the shield gen. You've always got to think, like, how can this be used in the most extreme way possible? And you can imagine that if we started giving them 30% extra HP for a few defenses, and let's just say we had 3 Titan cores to put on some defenses, and it increased defense and attack by 30%, say, all you're going to see is people putting them on the MDS, putting next to the shield gen, and just protecting them. So all it's going to do is make it really difficult to kill. So I wouldn't give them HP, but I would give them DPS. I really would. Extra healing, maybe. Something the bot already has. I really like that idea, and I thought, I think you're onto something here. And because I always said, my problem with base design at the minute is too much focus around the shield gen cluster, around the shield gen and healing and putting liege there and all healing and protecting itself. And it's kind of a case of you killed that because the MDS is in there as well. You kill that, you win the base. That's kind of what happens. And you've obviously got some outpost bots, but that's kind of the concept. Well, no one thinks about mortars anymore and launchers and beam lasers. They're kind of like a side thought. It's like, no, how to get rid of that? How to get rid of that cluster? How to deal with the combiner? How to deal with the outpost bots? That's pretty much it. Be careful of your pathing. That's pretty much it. But I feel like giving some defenses this sort of Titan boosts, whether it be more healing, whether it be more DPS, whether it something, it can sort of start bringing other defenses back to life, which is what I always wanted. I always wanted to bring more defenses to make them considered. So when you're attacking a base, you might see a beam laser with a Titan core on it, and it gives it 50% extra DPS or 100% DPS even. And you're like, whoa, like, that needs to go. That needs to go. As well as the shield cluster, but that needs to go. And I was also talking to Dale about counters and things like that for things, but we don't need counters if there's no HP. If there's no extra HP, we don't need counters. We just need to be considered the counter becoming the shield gen cluster. So is it kind of time that we sort of come away from the shield gen cluster? I've mentioned it before, and look at other defenses and make them more powerful in the game and give us more reason to take out individual defenses because they are so powerful. And I really like that idea. So kudos to Takeda. Really like that idea, mate. Really going wrong with it. I like people in playtest as well that catch on to something and push that. I've done that plenty of times and gone, no, this needs to happen. Like, this is really good. Like, you're not really listening. Come on, you're not took note of this. Did that with Beachcomber. They didn't want to give him a Blue Lagoon. They didn't want to give him the Golden Lagoon. And I was like, he has to have a Golden Lagoon. He has to have that Golden Lagoon. Even if it's just a skin, he has to have that Golden Lagoon. And they're kind of like, yeah, but it's sort of late in the day. I was like, he has to have it. He has to. And sort of hit home. So, sometimes you get onto something and the apes aren't listening or the Yodos aren't listening and you hit gold. And I think Jakeda's really hit gold with this. I think it's a really good idea for Titan cores. I think it's monetizable. You can monetize it. You can put them in events. Just 3 events for a Titan core because not something stupid, but if you put that in an event, people are going to want it to make their defenses more powerful, especially at top level wars. So I'm excited to maybe that being considered. So Yodos, if you're watching this, have a look into that idea. It's a good idea. It's a new core. It can maybe make people open crystals somehow. Do we get it in parts where we can trade things in? I don't know. I'm just spitballing. But I'm sure there's some way we can monetize it, some way we can bring it into the game to make defenses a bit more even again and not solely focused on that shield gen cluster and make Titans relevant again.